Hello, everyone. I'm Milton, and welcome to another episode of L19.io podcast. This is the place where we talk about real hackers, real attacks, real techniques, and people that, like I said before, who lives and breathe hacking every single day. My guest was my guest. Oh, it's not my guest. Yes. Sometimes I confuse Portuguese with an English. I mean, I'm Brazilian, and then sometimes it is happen with me. Not sometimes. I think probably every single day this happen with me. Okay, but my guest today is head of security at Rocket.Chat. He has done penetration testing on web, mobile, APIs, cloud, and stuff like that. He's Brazilian like me, but I probably you make mistake right now, but do you live? I think that he live in French. Yeah, he live in
That's
French.
correct. Yes.
Yeah, it's fine. Um, he has led red teams, hunted vulnerabilities, and found CVEs. Yeah, bro, it's not for. This is really a big task. It's really a hard job. Try to find CVEs. And Júlio, please say hi and tell to our audience a little about yourself.
Absolutely. Thanks for the invitation, by the way, and hi, everyone. So, as Milton was introducing me, my name is Júlio Araújo. I'm head of security at Rocket.Chat. I actually transitioned from the legal field to cybersecurity. So, I went to law school, I started studying law. I had a completely different vision of what I wanted to be back in the days. And then I just transitioned into cybersecurity. And then I started in offensive security directly, which is unusual. Most people start with like a help desk job or a blue team job, and then they transition to offensive security. I had a very unusual and weird way into offensive security, and then since then I've done, as you mentioned, pen tests on APIs, cloud, Active Directory, web applications, mobile applications, and so forth. So I've done a little bit of everything. As head of security as well, I've had the opportunity to work in different projects. So I've dealt with a lot of like compliance stuff. I've been dealing with a lot of blue team stuff now because I need to understand more about that side of things as well as the leader of my team. So yeah, a lot of interesting things in this past almost 7 years that I've been in working in cybersecurity. Yeah, I think this year by September is going to be 7 years.
Okay, cool. And okay, leverage your introduction. Let me say, has a head of security. What's the coolest hack or security test you have done there in your job that you can talk about? I don't know if you can talk a little about your specific things that you usually do in your daily job.
Yeah, absolutely. I think there's a very interesting case, a very interesting pen test that we've done. It was not at my current company. It was a couple of years ago. We were pen testing a big Brazilian bank. You definitely know it. And yeah, you definitely know it. We were pen testing their mobile apps, and they were also like they also had a health insurance app. As most Brazilian banks have, they all have some sort of health insurance. So we were pen testing this app. We found an IDOR. We found like a broken access control that was basically you could fetch the insurance policies, but to fetch the insurance policies, you need the user's social security number. We call it a CPF in Portuguese.
Okay.
And we didn't have any CPF. We didn't have any of that data, so we weren't able to validate the vulnerability and demonstrate impact. So we started to think, how can we actually gather CPFs from actual users? So we thought this bank probably obliges their employees to have the same health insurance. So
Oh
we could try to
goodness.
find CPFs of the employees themselves. So we
Yeah.
started hunting like PDFs of meetings of the leadership of that bank on, any of these PDF websites. They can actually upload the PDF. And sometimes these websites are going to tell you that they're going to delete the PDF. Some of them never delete it. So
Mm.
we found a PDF that was pretty much a meeting, like the recording of a meeting section of all
Hmm.
the directors of that bank with
Oh my
CPF
goodness.
and all the information, social security number and so forth. So we created a word list, and then we used that word list and we started to see like, the
Yeah.
glorious 200 OK on Burp Suite that we all love as pen testers. And we
Yeah.
started to dump the insurance policies. Then with the insurance policies, we had the car plates, for example, because you could insure, it was health insurance, but you also had insurance for other stuff as well in the same app. So we had like
Hmm.
car plates, we had other features, other information, and so forth. What we did right after that is we then used the car plates to actually locate the cars via the GPS feature, because there was also
Okay.
there. So what you could do is you could find the person's information online, the CPF, for example. You could fetch the insurance policies, and then you could locate the cars. And as they were the bank's directors, you
Hmm.
know that all the cars were like very luxurious.
Oh my
In Brazil,
goodness.
as you know, car theft is a big thing. So imagine that kind of vulnerability in the hands of bad people.
Yeah, yeah, because this is involve PII and involve really sensitive information. It's not only sensitive information, but yeah, this is really, really a big
Yeah.
way to start this podcast. It's
Yeah.
really interesting. Yeah, yeah,
And it was
and
a very cool vulnerability because we're not talking about like an RC. We're not talking about a fancy insecure deserialization or something like that. It's something simple. It's literally an IDOR with a little bit of like
yeah,
creativity.
and you probably could not imagine that this type of vulnerability usually exists in the type of in this type of businesses. Yeah, sometimes you usually you imagine, okay, um, this type of system, this type of businesses usually have a big concern when you're thinking security, when you're thinking in measures, or when you're thinking in the architecture to protect their systems. And then usually I never could think about, okay, one door that usually give you PII informations. Yeah. Okay. For people that don't know about CPF, it's like, for example, if you live here in Portugal, it's like a NIF. Okay. It's like, okay, it's like a personal number, it's like, yeah, in many other countries have another term that you use, but in Brazil, it's a CPF. um, that with CPF number you can do many things. And leverage this first question, um, which this which target is usually the most fun, let's say, and what is the hardest to break. For example, in this specifically penetration testing, you found one IDOR, and this IDOR, you basically leverage this vulnerability to create another vectors of attacks. And which target, it's more fun, and sometimes it's more hardest to break into.
I would say banks, even though I used the example of a bank and it was like just an idol, but I would say banks tend, especially nowadays. So that example was
Hmm.
like 4 years ago. Nowadays, with all the regulations that we're seeing, for example, in Europe, we have the new DORA regulation. Now they have to go through financial organizations. They have to go through what they call the threat-led penetration test, which is pretty much a red team engagement. I would say
Okay.
financial institutions are getting harder and harder. Um, Big techs as well. I haven't done a lot of work like on big techs, but big techs, they starting to up their game as well. And I would say that that also happens because of regulation. So AWS, for example, they need to up their game because they are starting to provide service to a lot of like government agencies, to a lot of different governments and so forth. So they need to go through vendor checks, they need to go through audits and so forth. So I would say that those are the ones that are becoming harder and harder to get in, which doesn't mean that it's impossible to get in. It just means
Yeah.
it just means that it's a bit harder.
Yeah.
The most fun ones, that's a very good question. Because you can have a lot of fun with a lot of different companies. Like you can have fun in a lot of different industries. You can have fun with fintechs. You can have fun with banks, but you can also
Yeah,
have
you can you
startups
can
and so forth.
you can choose, for example, one technique, for example, because for example my next question for you, for example, it's about usually when you start a pen test, what's the first move? Do you have one signature? It's like a way to find the first vulnerability. You have yes, it's like a methodology, you know. Usually depends on the pen tester, but I know many cybersecurity professionals or only hackers that usually have, like, let's say, one signature. Uh, Signature, when I say signature, it's like a way to find the first vulnerability, the way to find the first point of entry and stuff like that. And let me know how you think about that. How when you look to this type of challenges, how your first movement.
Absolutely. So there is definitely like a specific kind of technique or a specific kind of mentality that I have when I'm pen testing a specific asset. For example, when I'm dealing with Active Directory, which has been quite some time that I've done a pen test on Active Directory. But my first one, I was trying everything that I know at the time. That was like 5-6 years ago. I was trying everything. I was trying to shoot everything that I had at that specific Active Directory. It was a Zoom bridge, so we had an account and we were trying to do something. Nothing worked until I checked the net logon share, which is accessible by any user. And there
Yeah.
was scripts with it was basically the domain admins, one of the domain admins, because that specific organization had like 15 users that were domain admins. So yeah, we checked the net logon a couple of days after the pen test started, and there it was, credentials for you to use as you wanted. So when I'm dealing with Active Directory, the first thing that I do nowadays is check the net logon, check the open
Yeah.
shares, check the public shares, and most of the time you
Mm-hmm.
will have something. Most of the time you might have,
Yeah, for sure, for
yeah,
sure.
most of the time is literally domain admin. Sometimes is you can get another user and then you can use that user to move laterally to Prevask and so forth. So Active Directory, that's definitely something that I always check. When it comes to like cloud assessments, is definitely like policies that we know that will be dangerous. So a lot of users, especially developers, they will have a combination. That's what we call shadow admins. So they don't have admin directly, but they have a combination of privileges that combined would allow them to Prevask. So for example, on AWS, if a user has the pass role and the create and run instance, what they can do is they can create an instance, pass a role to that instance, and then start that instance, log into it, and then just use the profile of that instance. And if you have like the possibility of that user passing a role that is an admin or has more privileges, that is an instant Prevask. So cloud, that's always something that I'm always
Yeah.
looking at shadow admins, because most of the time you might not have, again, an admin. You might not have a very privileged account that is a low-hanging fruit, but you might have like a dev account that has all the privileges that you need to combine them to chain those misconfigurations and then have something juicy. And I think that for web applications and APIs, the low-hanging fruit is always like broken access control and cross-site scripting and SQL injection. Especially broken access control. Like A lot of the applications that I've tested, I would say 70% maybe of the applications and APIs that I've tested, there was some sort of broken access control. There was some sort of pre-VESC. A lot of the time it's as simple as you edit your own user and then you change your role from user to admin and that works. Or sometimes you register an account and then within the JSON object, you also add a role and then the application just accepts it because it's not validating all the parameters. It's what we call the mass assignment from the OWASP top 10. So I think that for each type of pen test, like each type of asset that we are testing, there's always some kind of thing that we will look first. And most of the time in talking to other pen testers and other security professions as well, and I think your case is probably the same, it always comes with experience. It's always a case, as I mentioned, like my first pen test against Active Directory, I didn't check netlogon right away, and there was a domain admin there. So I think that most of the time, it's experience.
Sometimes I think that, for example, usually when you work auditing businesses, big businesses, sometimes you think that, okay, depends on the businesses, the size of the businesses, you can imagine that this type of businesses have been created measures to protect easy things like that, you know, sometimes. But when you put / and just local domain name, and sometimes you can find, for example, bad files with domain control account names that you can use just to it's basically, sometimes it's like a Keycoin, you know, you sometimes just get this username and create one simple lateral movement and okay, it's pen test is finished. And sometimes you don't have more to do that because okay, you already get the maximum privileges, and then but this is really super interesting because I already did many assessments until now, and when I think or when I thought about that, usually this is let me try to explain this without to create one misperception about that. But usually I already have been audited businesses with really a high experience in security, but when you look that usually how much bigger, usually you found more vulnerabilities than, because for example, usually in this type of businesses you have many type of solutions, many type of applications. Usually you have a big infrastructure of Active Directory, network device and stuff like that, and usually you have a small team, and the same team is responsible to patch management, vulnerability assessment, penetration testing, and stuff like that. And the major problem here is sometimes this team usually have a big weaknesses that usually I say for my customers, that this is not only a lack of knowledge, but sometimes a lack of people to manage this type of environment, and then sometimes you forget, or sometimes you create one you create one short solution that just in my opinion, it's not my opinion, but in their opinion, needed to done in one specifically a short time of space of the time. And this bad that to put in net to log on sometimes is people forget this bet there, And when people like me and Julio go there and find this type of piece of cake, it's really a piece of cake. And then, yeah, for sure.
Absolutely. Yeah,
Yeah,
absolutely. And just to add on top of that as well, you asked before what are the most fun companies or organizations to pen test. I would say, and you tell me if you agree with that as well, it's companies that have a really big environment, an environment with different solutions, as you mentioned. So, for
yeah,
example, sometimes you pen testing an environment, you're like, oh, there's a different, Active Directory forest here. Let me try to pivot into that forest. And then you pivot
yeah,
into the forest and you're like, oh, wait, I found AWS credentials here. And then you pivot into AWS and you're like,
yeah.
okay, and inside AWS, you start to pivot into different services and different accounts. And when you see at the end of the
You
pen
already
test,
compromise all the environment.
you
Yeah,
compromise everything. You can do anything. You can do anything on
yeah,
inside of Active Directory. You can do anything on the cloud. You have access sometimes to the workstations, to all of the workstations because of the domain admin.
yeah,
So I think that's the most fun kind of pen test or red team engagement. And I completely agree with you that it's really, really hard to secure a company like a company like that, an organization like that, especially with a small team. So
yeah,
nowadays, as a head of security, what I try to do is identify what we need to prioritize, what really brings risk to the company, what we really need to close in terms of like security issues, security gaps, and so forth. Because there's so many things, so many controls, so many solutions, so many services, software, and so on, that it's impossible to cover everything. So to
yeah, for
identify
sure.
the riskiest ones, to identify the things
It's
that will actually lead to like massive compromise or to ransomware, for example, it's really tricky. I think as a head of security nowadays, that's probably the biggest challenge is how to allocate my team the best way possible to cover the most area, the most of the attack surface. That's really tricky.
Yeah, yeah. Just leverage this topic. Usually, hands-over attackers usually use simple techniques. Yeah. If you stop to think, when you, for example, put in the battleground, for example, the forensics people to working after one breach. Usually in the report you can see, for example, things like, okay, the attacker used this bat that exists inside this environment, or for example, this specifically user received one PDF that this machine uh, has, for example, the macro enabled, and basically the user just opened this PDF and run it one JavaScript with that
Yeah,
gave him one reverse shell, and okay,
yeah,
was really simple things, and just things like, for example, one machine that don't have endpoint security enabled, and
yeah.
uh, things like that basically help attackers to gain access. And yeah,
Yeah, most of the time, ransomware gangs they're going for the low hanging fruit, like they're going for the easy targets. So, as you said, you put the digital forensics on the ground, like the digital forensics team on the ground. You start to reverse engineer malware. You're not seeing malware that is doing like, user land unhooking or direct or indirect syscalls or anything like that, like fancy techniques, process hollowing, anything like that. No, sometimes
yeah,
they're literally dropping a Cobalt Strike beacon without any sort of obfuscation, and they're just like trying their luck. And
yeah,
they're trying to do that against thousands of organizations. If they hit like 10, 20 organizations with a ransomware and start to ask for a ransom that's like, I don't know, $5 million or something like that, that's already a
yeah,
big win for them. So they're not
yeah,
trying to go with the most sophisticated techniques. They're not trying to do what like nation supported, nation backed APTs are doing. They're going for the easy targets. And as you said, sometimes, and that happens even in like mature organizations as well, sometimes you don't have endpoint security in all of the workstations, or sometimes you
Yeah,
have
old operational system too have it.
exactly.
This is really interesting because, for example, if you think, okay, 10 years ago, okay, you sometimes change all the license of your environment. Usually, the most part of environments around the world usually use Microsoft, and then in the past, this type of license, try to license this type of environments, it's really expensive. But right now you have many ways to get the license. It's more cheaper than okay, but this is it's not more surprise because how much more I audit businesses, I can see that the major part of these businesses don't have a concern about license or try to change the license because, for example, it's really common. For example, in industries, you see, for example, I already had many I already did many audits in industries, and it's really common. You see, for example, one specifically network hash with sometimes hundred of computers with Windows 7 and with sometimes MES 17010 and rule. It's really a piece of cake usually when you are doing penetration testing inside this type of environment. And yeah,
Yeah,
and
absolutely. And
and
I agree.
okay,
Sorry. Yeah, I was going to say
no,
I
no,
agree.
yeah.
And we had just a example that you reminded me when you were talking about the Windows 7. We did a pen test once, and we got domain at domain. We started like pivoting across the
Mm-hmm.
network and so forth, and then we found one Windows XP. It was the only
Yeah,
one. It was one Windows XP,
yeah,
and
you
then
can leverage, you can
we
just enjoy this Windows
exactly.
XP.
And then we pivot into the Windows XP as well. And we asked the client at the time, why do you guys have a Windows XP? And they say, we have a very important piece of software that is actually responsible for like some sort of ICS
Yeah,
SCADA work or something like
yeah,
that. And it only works on Windows XP. If we
yeah, I
update
know that.
the operating system, this very important software stops working, and our ICS SCADA part of the network stops operating as well. Our machines, etc., they stop operating as well. So there's no way we can update this without like massive costs. So we're not planning on updating this.
Yeah.
And yeah, so it's a major liability that was just like sitting there, just waiting for someone to attack it.
Yeah, usually this is a interesting thing because usually the vendors right now with this boom of security in many I think it's not many countries, but I think this boom around the world, the major of vendors already have uh, sometimes new versions of their applications to the new operational systems, but this is okay, millions of dollars of, and then sometimes it's really expensive. And uh, these businesses sometimes it's more interesting for them to accept this risk or try to transfer this risk, then okay, I will mitigate this risk because just sometimes to mitigate this risk, really mitigate. I'm not saying try to create one specifically villain or try to isolate this machine. It's like a form to mitigate uh, this risk, but really mitigate updating the operational system and updating the application, because sometimes this application have to, for example, vulnerabilities. Sometimes you have one operational system updated, but this application sometimes has a vulnerability that allow attackers to get access in. And then, yeah, this is really complex, but talking about cloud penetration testing, cloud hacking, and you have done security in AWS and Kubernetes. And what do you think that is the biggest cloud mistake that hackers love to exploit? What you thinking about AWS, Kubernetes, and you can leverage this to talk sometimes to Docker or wherever.
Yeah, I would say in terms of initial access, is still liquid credentials. The amount, like the number of credentials that I've seen committed on GitHub, GitLab, and so forth, especially if it's a private repo. Sometimes devs think this is a private repo, no one is going to see this. I'm just going to commit the secrets anyways, and they do that. So that I've seen that so many times in my career, and I think it's still a technique that a lot of people leverage, both penetration testers and actual hackers. So in terms of initial access, that's definitely something that is out there. And in terms of moving inside of AWS, is definitely lack of least privilege. There is still a lot of companies that do not know, or they even know that they need to implement this privilege, but it's too complicated. They might not have a team with the expertise to do that, or they might not have enough time to do that, and so forth. Sometimes these companies have like one SRE, two SRE, and they do not have time to manage implementing a full list privilege process program in the company. So I think that those two are still like the most interesting things when it comes to AWS: initial access, leaked credentials, and when it comes to like breaching, accessing the AWS account and then moving inside of the AWS account, is definitely lack of least privilege. And yeah, I think it's getting better. I think that companies are starting to understand that there are cloud risks as well. They are very specific to the cloud, that you cannot have the exactly same mentality when you're pen testing AWS that when you're pen testing Active Directory, for example. Even the methodologies changes. So for example, whenever I do an AWS pen test or assessment, I always prefer to have a gray box or a white box approach. Because if you have a black box approach, it's much more like time consuming, and sometimes you might spend money on just trying to get in, when you can just have like an assumed breach, and then you can look at the actual misconfigurations and vulnerabilities. You can then have like a better approach and a wider approach at all of the services, all of the accounts, all of the roles, and so forth, and all of the integrations as well. So sometimes you can have like specific GitHub repositories that have access to AWS, and that can be a part of the attack surface as well, depending on how that's configured. Yeah, I would say that's nowadays,
it's interesting
it's
because
the most interesting things.
nowadays businesses sometimes when sometimes gets it's like penetration testing, usually focus on black box penetration test, but this can be a problem because sometimes people just assume that, okay, I have a web application file, like a measure of security to protect my application, but forget that if you have one credential leaked, just one credential leak, that it's really common if you go to many groups of leaks inside the platforms of Telegram or some other side of the world. You can see really many credentials leaked all the time. And then when you just focus on this type of penetration testing and assume that this type of technique is sufficient to if you just looking for something that I needed to get one certificate that these businesses did the penetration testing just for one audit stuff like that, it's okay. But if you really try to improve, and if you try to enhance your the security of your environment, of your application, stuff like that, you really needed to find another ways and to find another approach to grow your security inside of your environment. This is really, really important, because sometimes, yes, in my opinion, white box penetration testing today, it's really more interesting if you are looking for grow in cybersecurity. Yeah, because
100% agree.
Yeah, usually I have a friend that usually say it's more interesting that I find one vulnerability than Russian people. Yeah,
Exactly.
and then,
That's a great
and then and you have used a framework like Pasta Stride for threat modeling. And let me know, how can this help a hacker think like an attacker before even touching a target? This is really one interesting question for people that never worked with threat modeling or never know about that. And then this is really one thing that you have opportunity to talk about and say, because many people really don't know what is pasta or what is tried for threat modeling. And I already had one short conversation with another guest where we talk threat modeling. But let me know about your opinion about the use this type of frameworks like Pasta, Stride, and stuff like that, and how can this help hackers think like an attacker before touching target?
Absolutely. Yeah, I personally love threat modeling. I think it's a very interesting process. It's a great tool for both attackers and security teams, application security engineers, and so forth. I know a lot of people that do not like threat modeling or think it's too boring or something like that. And I always say there's no specific or single correct way of doing threat modeling. Like, you have these frameworks, but they are supposed to help you. They are supposed to be like guidelines, and not supposed, you don't need to follow Stride by the book. You don't need to follow Pasta by the book. So for example, at Rocket.Chat, we did a little bit of what GitLab did as well. They took the Pasta framework and they created a simplified version on top of it that worked for them. So I think that's the beauty of threat modeling. And whenever I talk about threat modeling, I like to think of it as evil brainstorming. It's like, it doesn't need to be anything complex. It doesn't need to be anything fancy. It doesn't need to be, you don't need to follow a framework that has 100 steps. As long as you're doing evil brainstorming, that's great. As long as you're thinking about ways that this can go wrong, the development of this application or the development of this feature can go wrong, that's great. And then when it comes to like red teaming and pen testing, I know companies that do that. So they do threat modeling before even starting the pen test. So Praetorian does that, for example. Praetorian is an American pen testing consultant firm. They do that. So first thing they will do is they will try to understand the asset that they're pen testing. So they're going to try to understand your AWS account. They're going to try to understand your web application or your API and so forth. They will create a threat model of that application, and then they will start to create like test cases based on the threat model. And that's something that I've started to apply in my career as well. in terms of pen testing, in terms of offensive security in general, and even in terms of like assessing the company that I'm working for, is let's do a threat model. Let's think like attackers, and let's think about what exactly we could do. What are the threats that would actually cause impact? So, for example, you were mentioning black box pen tests, and sometimes companies think that they have a firewall and they are secure and so forth. When you have that kind of scenario, it can be true for the network part of the assessment. But if a credential is leaked, or if someone spins up like EvoGNX and phishes someone's Okta session cookies, and then that session cookie is someone who has access to AWS or other services, then you're owned. That's pretty much it. So threat modeling the company itself is right. It's really interesting as well, because you can start to think about things like the C-levels don't have MFA, or maybe they have MFA, but they don't have like phishing resistant MFA. They don't have like FIDO keys. They don't have Touch ID. They don't have, they have MFA, but they don't have the MFA that we think would be the most efficient against some types of phishing attacks. So you can start to think about the parts of the attack surface that are actually going to cause the most damage. So
this is the good threat modeling. You really needed to think in all the steps. You needed to think in all the steps, not only about your application, not only about your environment, but you need to think more and people. You needed to put inside of your plan, your threat modeling, because if really many people, when are designing applications or environment, forget of people. I don't know why, but
and some people think that threat modeling is only for applications, or it's something that only works in the development process. Not at all. You can literally think about like, I'm implementing a new system, let's say an SSO like Okta, for example. Let's threat model our own implementation of Okta. Like, what are the risks that Okta will bring into our environment, and what can we do with those risks? Like, anything that you are bringing into the company, anything that you're bringing into the attack surface, you can create a threat model of that and then act upon the threats, the security risks, and so forth. So that's why I love threat modeling, is that it's a process that you don't need to follow like specific guidelines. You can have your own process that works for you. So nowadays I have a small team, so having a threat model process with a lot of steps and a lot of like specific documentation templates and so forth wouldn't work for us. But having something a little bit more flexible that still has documentation, it still has some steps, having your own framework that works for us, it works for a small team with a lot of demand. It's something that helped us a lot. And it also helped, and I can see the impact of that on the developers themselves. There's a lot of developers that I work with nowadays that they love the threat modeling process, but because they are able to contribute as well, and even people from other teams. So we bring in something into the attack service, we're involving other teams, we're involving project managers, we are involving developers, we're involving engineering managers, we're involving architecture people, and so forth. So a lot of people came to love threat modeling as well in the companies that I worked for, because we were able to do something that actually worked. And that sometimes is hard. Like, it's implementing something or a framework or a process that you see out there in a way that works for your company, in a way that works for your context. I think like security champions is something that a lot of companies struggle with as well, because it's really, really hard to implement a security champions program that works, because there's no template. Like, it's going to be different for every company.
Yep. I had in my last conversation with a friend that really work with the most part of time work with threat modeling. He said one interesting thing that I already used it to another areas inside of cybersecurity, but never thought about threat modeling like that. And he said, you needed to use or to create one fun way to explain that. And this is interesting because he told me that that the way that he found to create one environment that can share information each other was creating the gamification between another sectors inside the same businesses. And right now, all the people inside the businesses create a culture behind the scene, behind when you need to, and then when you need to create or when to build a culture of security inside these businesses. Usually you need to show them that it's fun, this is really interesting, so that these people can engage the projects and things like that. Yeah.
Yeah, and
this
I agree. And you need to speak their language as well. That's something that I've learned in my career that was very important is I need to know how to talk to developers and the same way that I need to know how to talk to the directors. I cannot have the same discourse, the same speech for
the
both of them.
same yeah the
Yeah,
same speech for
and
Royal.
that is really, really tricky. And a lot of security professionals lack that. I know many talented security professionals, hackers, blue teamers, and so forth. They're so talented in terms of like technical skills, but they still lack the communication skills. So
Yeah.
that's why I still see a lot of like clash between developers and the security team. I still see a lot of like developers that hate security teams, and I still see like security teams that hate developers.
Yeah,
And
I
when
see
you,
this all the time.
yeah, and it's terrible because when you learn to speak their language, when you learn how to deal with developers in a way that is actually that you actually add value to them, you're not simply sending them vulnerabilities and saying you need to fix this in 10 days. That's not how you should be doing this. You
Yeah.
should actually write a very good report in a way that the developers will understand, and then you should call them, put them in a room together, and then you should explain it and say, hey, this is the vulnerability, this is how it works, this is the
Yeah.
impact, this is how I exploited it. Like this is
Yeah,
the
you need to
alternative.
show, yeah, exactly. You
Yeah,
need to show that you are here to help them.
exactly.
Because if you show just another side, okay, I found this vulnerability and you need to fix them. Bro,
Yeah.
but you need to explain how the importance, you need to explain the risk, you need to explain many things that, because yeah, it is interesting because usually talking about developers, let's use developers like to this example. And usually right now with AI, many developers are using AI for sometimes generate the most part of code. It's okay, it's not a problem, but usually many developers are adjusting, copy and paste the result of one prompt that they just ask for ChatGPT, And I don't know if you already listened one term that's called let me remember. um, oh my goodness, let me remember right now. It's that vibe coding. I don't know
Vibe
if
coding.
you,
Yes,
yeah,
absolutely.
yeah, vibe
Using
coding.
AI for the
Yeah,
coding. Yeah.
basically, this is really a big problem for security. Okay, you can develop uh, many applications really, really fast, but this is create many security problems because the AI it's not have a concern about the quality of code. Okay, AI it's just have one focus. It's okay, I need to release this code, to release this page, or to release this application, but this security is not the main concern. That, and then when you try to explain for people, for example, that use vibe coding for, okay, I need to explain security. If you don't explain how the importance, um, how security measures they needed to implement and such, like, you create really a big problem between uh, professional securities and, let me say, pseudo developers. Because right now when you use vibe coding, you don't need to know nothing about that. You don't need to know sometimes how to write one line of code. You just need to say prompts. You need to get prompts and write prompts. Yeah. And I remember that I was in a conference that I talked in a WASP here in Portugal, and before me, I watched one businesses that talk about vibe coding, and I confess that was the first time that I listened about, and I really, to me, was a big surprise. And whoa, just okay. I already thought about, okay, right now I can open ChatGPT and send prompts. Okay, create this one HTML with that with this type of content and needs to be beautiful and stuff like that. But right now I have a platform that you just send prompts and okay, and the minutes you have a platform you're working on. But like usually people that work in vibe coding know that this is really a disaster for coding security. Yeah. And really,
Yeah.
okay. Yeah. Um, okay. And we already talk about threat modeling, about your career and stuff like that. And let's talk about your CVEs. You have found and published CVEs.
Yeah.
And how, let me know, how do you start hunting for a 0 day? Because, okay, usually you have many bug bounty platforms that you have opportunity to check security vulnerabilities and stuff like that. I really don't have more time for that. My time
Yeah.
but I really let's say I really think this is important and interesting for people like you found and publish vulnerabilities like that. And let me know how how you think about that, how you uh, how you start when you needed to find, or how do you prepare yourself to start one new hunting.
Yeah, absolutely. So yeah, nowadays I have two CVs and they are both
Mm-hmm.
on the same application. And I think it was 2 years ago, a year and a half ago, something around that. And it was a time that I had done a lot of certifications, and everything that I try to do in my careers most of the time is to learn something new. Like it's to learn, to be exposed to something. So certifications, most of the certifications that I do, it's not to have like a fancy 4 letters certification on my LinkedIn or something like that. It's because I generally want to learn that thing. So for example, I've done very recently, my last certification was a Google Cloud Red Team Professional one,
Mm-hmm.
because I wanted to learn more about Google Cloud. Previous to that, I did a certified Kubernetes administrator because I actually wanted to deep dive into Kubernetes and so on. So CVEs was pretty much the same thing. I had done a lot of certifications, and I was like at a point in my career that I was thinking, okay, what else do I need to do? Like, what do I really need to expose myself to? And I thought finding vulnerabilities, like security research, finding 0 days, trying to actually get into the skin of a security researcher and find CVs and report CVs, go through the entire process. So what I did was I followed a article by, I can probably be forgetting his name right now, but I think it was Florian Waters or something like that.
Mm-hmm.
He had a great article on how to start, like what you should look for and so forth. So what I did is I started to look for projects that were interesting to me somehow, that were something that I could understand. So like if you have zero experience with, let's say, AI, or you have zero experience with, like, I don't know, drones or ICS SCADA, I
Yeah, you
wouldn't
try to find
recommend.
one vulnerability that it's almost impossible. Yeah.
Yeah, so I thought, let's go with something that I know. Let's go with a web application that is something that I can understand. It's something that is not going to be too hard. I can have access to the code base since it's open source, so that helps a lot because I'm going to be able to do like a white box. I'm going to be able to follow a white box approach. I'm going to be able to read the code and so forth. And that's also something that I wanted to improve, like my code reviewing skills and so forth. And we can even talk about, like, do pen testers need to code and so forth, because it's a bit controversial
Yeah.
topic later. So yeah, that's what I did, and then I found something that met all of those requirements, and then I started to like study the code and start like experimenting with it, just doing a pen test pretty much against it, but with access to the code and reading the code at the same time and exploring it, and again, thinking about like different scenarios that I could use against that application, a little bit of like threat modeling, not official threat modeling. I wasn't documenting it, but thinking about it in the way that I would be doing in a threat model. And then the first one that I found was a remote code execution that was pretty much, they had all
You
of like
started
the,
big, remote code
yes.
execution the first time. Ooh.
Yeah, I was not looking for it. I know that a lot of like security researchers, when they're looking for a CVE, they're looking for a specific vulnerability. So that's their methodology. So that's something that works as well. You're looking specifically for RCEs, that's your specialty, or you're looking for cross-site scripting, or you're looking for SQL injection and so forth. I wasn't looking for that specifically, but then I saw the opportunity. I saw like a feature that allowed me to upload files. I looked at the code. I saw that all of the PHP, like dangerous PHP extensions, were being blocked. I tested it and they were actually being blocked, except for the FAR extension, the PHAR. So I created a little POC. I tested. I got a reverse shell. I was like, okay, this is a CVE.
Okay.
So that was my first one. And the second one was a little bit similar. It was also an RCE, but it was a bit more theoretical because you needed the ability to upload a file anywhere in the server, and then you had like an LFI slash path traversal that you were able to do, and then you would load the file. So if you had like an FTP, or if you have another service running on the same server, and you were able to upload a file to any location whatsoever, you could include that location within the application, and that was also an RCE. So I got 2 RCEs, but I wasn't looking for RCEs specifically. I was just trying to, like, I was just reviewing code and trying to get exposure to
Yeah, but
research. So
this
that's
is
how
this
things
is
start.
yeah, but this is really interesting because, for example, I work with cybersecurity more than 15 years, and I never published one CVE. And this is because you need to spend a lot of time. You need
Yes.
to spend a lot of time like a researcher, analyzing code and things like that. And the most part of time I teach for many people around the world. Usually, I never separated one specific time to focus on, try to find one vulnerability, to find it's okay, one vulnerability. When I say focus on, publish one CVE. Yeah,
Yeah.
vulnerability I
You
find
find
every
many.
single day.
You
Yeah,
find many.
I find every single day. But this is really interesting. I know professionals that sometimes don't have any or don't have certifications,
Yeah.
and but have sometimes 10 CVs, 20 CVs, and bro. And this is really a proof that sometimes certifications, it's really important. Yesterday I get another certification. I get another certification from Sec Group. I really love certifications. I have more than 30 certifications, and
Yeah.
only in security. Before I started my career in security, I worked with data centers and stuff like that. I'm not counting with the certifications, but only in cybersecurity I have more than 30 certifications. and I never found one CVE. And I really think that this is hard. It's not easy. It's not easy because you need to expend more really time. You don't have a certain that you receive
Yeah.
okay money if you found some vulnerability, because sometimes when you found a vulnerability, sometimes another people already found the same vulnerability, and you receive a answer about for example from HackerOne and stuff like that, that this vulnerability it's duplicated. And okay, but I really think this is it's really important and interesting because people like you basically grow the community, grow the tools that are available on GitHub and stuff like that, that I can use
Yeah.
in my day. You can use your day for our work. And yeah,
Yeah,
and
it's
my
very time consuming. Bug
yeah,
bounty and CVEs, they're both like
yeah,
very
but
time
I really,
consuming.
I don't have more time. I really,
Yeah.
when I have time for that, I study every single day many things,
Yeah.
and I try to right now invest my time in certification that really I can get new knowledgement, because um, uh, right now in the world have many type of vendors that provides you many type of certifications with the same knowledgement, and you need to really get what really you grow your skills and your knowledgement. And I try right now to focus more and create new things, publish new techniques and publish things that with this project right now, this project
Yeah.
actually started with the thinking to share my skills and share my repositories that right now it's until now it's private in my GitHub, that I trying step by step I trying to put in public for the community. This is my goal right now, and in this basically between um, I'm writing my articles and built my new website at nanthing.io. I thought, okay, um, I need to bring here people that have the same thought, that have histories to share and stuff like that. And basically, R19.io podcast was released, let me say. Yeah. And Julio, for someone who wants to be a hacker today, where should they start? What do you think? What you recommend, like tools, labs, certifications? Because usually, okay, our audience, okay, we have expert listens or watching, but we have our beginners here too. And for someone who wants to be a hacker today, where they should start with tools, labs, certifications, platforms? What do you think about that?
Yeah, that is a great topic as well. And everything that I will say here is based on my own experience and my own opinion. Again, this can work different for different people. So another professional will have a completely different opinion, and that's completely
Yeah, for
valid
sure.
as well. But what I think is learn the basics. That is very important. And I say that because when I started my career, as I mentioned before, I started directly into offensive security. I started doing pen tests, and the lack of the fundamentals, like the lack of basic knowledge, most of the time would be my main blocker. So whenever
Yeah.
I was talking to like clients, for example, presenting the penetration testing reports, and they would ask a very specific fundamental question. Sometimes it was a question about like a concept that someone who studied the basics would know about. it would be a big blocker for me. So first thing is learn the basics, but I know that sometimes the basics can be a little bit boring. So what you can do
Yeah.
is you can learn the basics at the same time that you do like try hack me, for example, or you do hack the box and so forth. When it comes to web application skills, I still think that Portswigger has the best material out there. So they
Yeah,
have the
for
Web
sure.
Security Academy. It's entirely free. They have the labs and so forth. Like, so if you are a beginner, you're starting to deal with web security, you're starting to do like web security, web pen testing and so forth, I would really recommend Portswigger. I mentioned before TryHackMe and Hack the Box. I think they're also great platforms as well. There's a lot of other platforms out there that you could try depending on what you want to learn. And something that I mentioned before as well that is very controversial: learn to code. And I say that because, again, my own experience was it took me a while to learn to code. And when I learned to code, it was a game changer. Like when I learned
Yeah.
to build my own tools, when I learned to actually code, like perform a review of code and then understand other people's tools or understand like vulnerabilities and understand why they were happening, or even, for malware development, for example, you need to understand Windows APIs, you need to understand how they work, you need to know how to code in C to be able to evade defenses, to be able to do a lot of stuff when it comes to malware development. So a lot
Yeah.
of the things that I learned and it really improved my skills were after I learned to code. And I know that there's a lot of people who say you don't need to know how to code to be a good pen tester. And I agree. You can still be a good pen tester without knowing how to code. You can still be a good pen tester like using tools that are available in the market. There are, Bloodhound, for example, or NetExec that used to be CrackMap exec. There's still a lot of like tools out there, Mimikatz, Rubles, all the C2 frameworks. So I saw that you did an article on Adaptix C2
Mm-hmm.
framework, great
Yeah.
framework as well.
Thank you.
But if you really want to up your game, learn to code, you're going to be able to develop your own C2 framework. You're going to be able to develop your own agents. You're going to be able to develop your own tools. You're going to be able to
Yeah, for sure.
change the tools that already exist to evade defenses. You're going to be able to, for example, when you know how to code and all of the tools that were available out there, available in the wild, fail, you can still try to build your own tool. And maybe you will fail as well, but at least you have the ability, you have the skill to try that. So knowing how to code is very important as well. And when I started to learn it, it was hard for me because most of the time you will see, you will check websites for like ideas on what to code, and they will say, build a password generator, build a calculator, and honestly, that's hella boring. Like that's really really boring.
Yeah. Yeah.
So for example, build a vulnerable application. Learn how to code an API and build a vulnerable API, and then you learn how to fix that API. You're going to be
Yeah.
learning not only how vulnerabilities work in the code, you're going to be learning how to code, and you're also going to be learning how to actually fix those vulnerabilities as a developer would. So like start, playing with things, start
Yeah.
building things and breaking things. And I think that's a very, very good way to learn. Like, especially that after you do a lot of CTFs, after you do certifications, and I also agree that certifications are a game changer as well. So I would recommend everyone having like at least 3 certifications, and do the certifications because you want to learn and not because you want to have something for your resume. So choose like, choose a web application, a web pen testing certification,
Yeah.
choose a mobile one, choose a cloud one, choose an Active Directory one, choose the ones that you actually want to learn and go for it. And yeah, build things, break things. That will definitely help you improve your skills. And as I was mentioning, I got to a point where I had done certifications, CTFs, pen tests, and so forth. And the way that I would improve from there forward was building and breaking things, was studying other
Yeah, for
people's
sure.
code,
For
learning
sure.
how things work. And again, back to the
Yeah,
fundamentals.
exactly. The fundamentals, it's really important because I I already teach for many people, and usually I felt that many people after some classes asked me, I'm sorry, teacher, I don't understand nothing about that because I never opened one command line interface. I don't know what is. I don't know what is for example, how to work one IP address. I don't know how to work simple things. And when you, because hacking, it's really a big. This is really interesting for many people, and sometimes I already listen from people. Okay, I moved uh, to penetration test because when I finished to watch the Mr. Robot, I really I really saw that this is I needed to do to the rest of my life. And I thought, okay, bro, but you needed to go back one step, because okay, to do things like Mr. Robot, let's say, you need to grow, and you needed to go step by step. You needed to study things that probably you'll be boring, like you said, but this type of things are really, really important and necessary so that you can have a one, let me say, it's not a beautiful path, but one solid path.
I agree.
Because
Yeah.
okay, you can start like you, okay, people can start like you directly inside of security, but I advise you that you start studying basic things, network, operational systems, and okay, you can start, for example, with web applications. Right now, if you like Julio said, Portswigger right now have a big platform with free materials there, and you can use and you can leverage this knowledge for another areas in the future. But you need to understand first the basis so that you don't create one a big frustration in the future. Okay, Julio, and let me know about offside of hacking. What you do to relax or to recharge your battery. Okay, when you okay, outside of your job, outside of your hacking, and what you do to relax.
Yeah, reading has been a big thing lately, and when I say reading, is reading anything that is not security related, like reading novels, reading about other areas, reading about lots of stuff. That's something that has been a big thing for me lately. Podcasts as well. So I love to just listen to podcasts. Um, Going out with like family and friends is something that really helps as well. So yeah, as we since we're talking about like people who want to start as well in cybersecurity, I think it's very important to have things outside of cybersecurity. I know a lot of professionals that once they get into cybersecurity, that's their entire lives, and that starts to be like really prejudicial to their mental health. So I would not recommend doing that because I've done that before, and it's not healthy at all. And
Yeah.
take your time. Especially when you're learning cybersecurity, take your time. You're not going to become a pen tester in like 2 months. You're not going to become a red teamer in 1 year. This is an area that really, really takes time to build your skills and so forth. So
Yeah.
yeah, what I like to do outside of hacking is most or outside of security, most of the times like things that are not related to security. So sometimes doing some sports or going out for a run or playing guitar is something that I'm
You're
getting
playing
back.
guitar.
I'm
I'm play
getting back at
drum.
it. Yeah, I'm getting back
Okay.
at it. Yeah, I haven't.
Okay.
I hadn't played in a long time, and then a couple of months ago, I just picked it up again, and I've been just playing with it, like playing around with it. So yeah, reading, playing guitar, going out with friends and family, just relaxing, and just doing like chill stuff or doing stuff that is unrelated to cybersecurity is something that I've been trying to exercise more and more. Sometimes it's hard,
Okay.
especially leading a team and as a head of security. Sometimes
Yeah,
when
for
something
sure.
happens, you need to be available, Friday night, you need to be available during the weekend, you need to be available during a holiday, but it's still very important to like balance things. And yeah,
Yeah,
so
for sure. For sure.
that's most of what I do. And traveling is nice as well. So if you have the opportunity to travel, it's nice. And
Yeah,
learning
yeah, for
languages.
sure. Yeah,
Learning
for sure.
languages is
I agree
something
with
that
that.
I enjoy.
Yeah, for sure. I agree with that. I wanted to learn in the future Russian. I really, I have many friends there in Ukraine too, and I have in the first episode I bring here Sergei Shubarov. That is my friend a
Yeah.
long time ago. He's from Russia, and when I said him, bro, I needed to learn Russian, and he looked me, Russian? Why? Oh, I just wanted to learn
Yeah.
Russian.
It's
Yeah.
interesting. It's a great
Yeah.
language. Yeah,
And
exactly.
yeah, for sure. And Júlio, leave us with the one final hacking tip that anyone watching or listen can to improve their skills.
One final tip.
Yeah.
Yeah. Reverse engineer malware and reverse engineer tools. That's
Yeah.
my tip. Like, learn how Bloodhound works. Learn how Rubus works. Learn about like why pass the hash is possible. Get into the root of those things. And by reversing malware, you can also see malware using those techniques, and it's quite interesting as well. Like, especially custom malware, and not only C2 agents that are in the market, like Sliver agents or Cobalt Strike and so forth. It's especially like custom rats, Trojans, and so forth. Start reversing engineering those. Start slow. Start with the basic ones, the simplest ones, and then you can like build up with the harder ones. But yeah, definitely look into how things work, and then things will start clicking. Because I had that
Okay.
difficulty in my career of like seeing a technique and then thinking, how does this work? Like, is this some sort of magical thing? Is this a spell? And no, it's not a spell. There's some logical explanation behind that. So learn that logical
Yep.
explanation. That will help you a lot.
Okay. Júlio, thank you for sharing your hacks, your stories, your mindset with us. Like I all the time say, this is exactly what this project, the R19.io, it's about. Real hacking, real knowledge, real people. And to everyone watching or listen, if you enjoyed this episode, share it, follow us, and please get ready to the next one. Júlio, I really appreciate your time here. Thank you for that.
My pleasure.
And
It was great. Thanks a
this
lot.
this house is your house too. And see you next time.
See you next time.
Bye, guys.